Hello everybody, today's lesson will be poetry. The title of our poem today is I Was a Skinny Tomboy Kid by Alma Luz Villanueva. Alma Luz Villanueva. Objectives. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to: Number 1. Analyze any irregular poem. Number 2. Analyze its component parts. Number 3. Predict its main theme. And finally, we'll be able to trace the various images and sound devices. Lead in. Alma Luz Villanueva, born 1944. She was raised in the Mission District of San Francisco by her maternal grandmother, a Yaqui Indian healer. Although Villanueva now writes in English, the inspiration for her works is rooted in the Spanish language and in the Yaqui prayers her grandmother used to sing every morning. Now, dears, let's start reading the poem I Was a Skinny Tomboy Kid by Alma Luz Villanueva together. I was a skinny tomboy kid who walked down the streets with my fists clenched into tight balls. I knew all the roofs and backyard fences. I liked traveling that way, sometimes not touching the sidewalks. For blocks and blocks, it made me feel victorious. Somehow, over the streets, I liked to fly from roof to roof, the gravel falling away beneath my feet. I liked the edge of almost not making it, and the freedom of riding my bike to the ocean and smelling it long before I could see it. And I traveled disguised as a boy, I thought, in an old army jacket, carrying my fishing tackle to the piers and bombing bait and a couple of cokes and catching crabs. Sometimes, and selling them to some Chinese guys, and I'd give the fish away. I didn't like fish, I just liked to fish. And I vowed to never grow up to be a woman and be helpless like my mother. But then I didn't realize the kind of guts it often took for her to just keep standing where she was. Grew like a thin, stubborn weed, watering myself whatever way I could, believing in my own myth, transforming my reality and creating a legendary self. Every once in a while, late at night, in the deep darkness of my sleep, I wake with a tenseness in my arms, and I follow it from my elbow to my wrist, and realize my fists are tightly clenched, and the streets come grinning, and I forget who I am protecting, and I coil up in a self-mothering fashion and tell myself it's okay. Background. Although the word tomboy was originally defined as a rude or noisy boy, it grew to be a label for a girl whose behavior and appearance were not considered to be traditionally feminine. In this poem, the speaker relates her experiences of growing up in San Francisco, California, as a self-described tomboy. Summary. In Alma Villanueva's poem, I Was a Skinny Tomboy Kid, the speaker describes how she acted when she was young, when she wandered around her neighborhood and leapt from roof to roof. She tells how she biked to the ocean dressed as a boy, went fishing, and sold her catches. She didn't want to grow up and be a woman because She associated it with helplessness. At the time, she didn't see the inner strength her mother had. At the end of the poem, she notes that even to this day, she still sometimes wakes up in the tense state of mind she had then. Paraphrase: I was a skinny tomboy kid is about a young girl who is confused about the roles of a woman and man. She likes the activities done by boys, such as riding her bike and catching fish. She traveled disguised as a boy, wearing an army jacket. She doesn't want to grow up and become a helpless woman like her mother. This sentence said that she's trying to find something or someone else to be like. So she decides to just play the male's role. Her view towards women is that they are helpless. Obviously, she doesn't have a positive role model to look up to. She is a very confused little girl that needs a strong role model to look up to in her life. Another piece of evidence from this poem that this girl likes boyish activities is when the girl is describing how she always walks on rooftops. She also goes fishing a lot and clenches her fists into tight balls. The girl likes to try and do boyish things, to be tough. In the girl's mind, men are strong and important, while women are weak and helpless. She puts on an image of being a tough little girl so that people will not perceive her as if she is helpless. The last piece of evidence is when she says, believing in my own myth, transforming my reality and creating a legendary self. She wants to be able to grow up and be strong and important. Throughout the poem, the little girl believes that she is not fooling anyone by her disguise, but herself. There is a shift or a turning point before the word but in the following lines. And I vowed to never grow up to be a woman and be helpless like my mother, but then I didn't realize the kind of guts it often took for her to just keep standing. As the girl doesn't want to become a helpless woman like her mother, but she admits that her mother has courage or guts to keep standing or facing her problems. Now, dears, let's ask ourselves some important questions, such as what is the genre of this poem? This poem is a free-verse autobiographical poem. What about its form and structure? This poem consists of 87 running lines without stanza break. The theme of this poem is to embrace who you really are. So, dears, you must love yourself as you really are. The tone of this poem is a depressing, sad one. And another theme dealt with in this poem is being different can be difficult. The big question here is, do young people sometimes feel like outsiders? Now, it's time to discuss the different figures of speech in this poem. First of all, we have a simile in I grew like a thin, stubborn weed. Here, the poet likens herself to a stubborn weed. There is a personification in and the streets come grinning. The poet personifies the streets as people who can grin or smile. Finally, we have a metaphor in watering myself whatever way I could, as the poet compares herself to a plant that can be watered. Now it's time to discuss the sensory language found in this poem. Image number 1. To the ocean and smelling it. Here we have an image that appeals to the sense of smell. Image number 2. Long before I could see it. Here we have an image that appeals to the sense of sight. Shifting to the sound devices found in this poem, we have alliteration in sometimes sideways, made me, somehow streets, fly from, smelling sea, bumming bait, couple cokes, catching crabs, sometimes selling, deep darkness, follow from, mothering myself. Repetition. The first person pronoun I is repeated all over the poem. First person point of view, of course, is used here, as this poem is an autobiographical poem. The words blocks and blocks are repeated in line 11. The word roof is repeated twice in line 18 and 19. The words fish and like are repeated in lines 50 and 51. Now, dears, I'd like to thank all of you for your attention and for your listening carefully to my explanation. I enjoyed teaching this lesson for you, and I hope that every one of you has enjoyed it.